We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. If you're listening to this on the podcast feed, wondering where this video is, of course, I mean, by this time, it's playoffs. You guys know this is the one video per week that will live exclusively on the Line Movement YouTube channel. So if you're here, welcome in. Toss a like on this video. Do us a solid. Consider subscribing to the channel. A ton of live streams and stuff going on for each and every sport throughout the year. Obviously, as football and the regular season is wrapped up, we'll have a ton of coverage for the playoffs, of course. So you're going to be doing all of these things because on my show, on the Line Movement shows, we're going to continue to bring you guys some of the best guests in the entire industry. Of course, one of those people joins me again today is TJ Hernandez. He's the director of DFS at 444 Football. TJ, I know you're excited to talk about the Bills, but are you excited for the playoffs in general, my man? How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm definitely excited. I mean, this is like the only or the first time all season that I kind of watch games like a fan more than a fantasy content creator. Obviously, we still have some slates, but just a little different, in the playoffs.
It always feels a little bit different. I feel this way, I know it's not the exact same thing, but when hockey playoffs start, I get to sit there and actually watch as a fan because there's a little bit less going on. So I feel that way for football. I think that these slates in particular, I think there's still a huge edge. And if you're willing to pay attention, late swap, that sort of thing, just actually threw up a video on my channel with Ryan Hodge breaking down the top 5 tips if you're playing playoff DFS. So definitely check out that video. I'll actually link that one right here for you guys if you want to check that out after this video. But we're going to do things a little bit different this week. Obviously, this is our locks of the week segment on DraftKings. Normally, we would have, or at least I was hoping we would have a featured 6-game slate on DraftKings. But I mean, they need to get their rake, as TJ knows from all the way back in the poker days. That's always the most important thing. So we have 2 slates. We have a Saturday slate and a Sunday slate. Those are the featured slates. That's where the prize pools are much larger. So that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to get a lock from TJ in each game instead of just at each position. So I think that'll be the way that would make the most sense to go about this. TJ, let's jump into game number 1, Colts at Bills. I mean, I don't even know why I asked you who your lock of the week is from this one. It's Josh Allen. Tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a 3-game slate here, right? So the thing we really need to be thinking about, and I'm guessing you and Haji probably talked about this, is the fact that you kind of need to be building around game flow, planning your flags. We're not super focused in on value because there's just kind of overlap everywhere. So who are you going to be building around the most? Who are you willing to be the most overweight on? And that's Josh Allen as the main quarterback to be building around, and just the Bills offense as a whole. They're the only team on Saturday projected for over 28 points. And we know that almost all of that offense, especially the scoring, comes from Josh Allen, both his legs and his arm. This is a Colts team that if we look at their season-long stats, they've been decent against quarterbacks, but down the stretch really struggling for their last 5 games, allowing at least 20 fantasy points. The only game they didn't give that up was to Mike Glennon, but we saw them really struggle. Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson, Ben Roethlisberger all had really big games against them. And one thing about both of these teams really is they don't get pressure on the quarterback. So we shouldn't expect too much to upset the Bills passing game. And if we look at where the Colts are strong in their secondary and where they're weak, it really fits the strength of the Bills, and that's really quick stuff or underneath stuff to Stephon Diggs. The Colts allow the 7th most yards per attempt to wide receivers lined up in the slot. Diggs gets a ton of work inside, but the 9th fewest completions on deep balls. So one of the biggest transformations of this Bills passing game has been they haven't relied on the deep ball. They're good, they're efficient on it, but they're not overly reliant on it. So I really like Josh Allen just to pick apart this Indy defense that doesn't get pressure, that really struggles over the middle of the field.
It's a really interesting slate, and maybe interesting isn't the right word. This is kind of the opposite of what I normally like on a playoff slate. I kind of like when the chalk is later. I think that this Bills team is going to be extremely popular in game number 1. Obviously, honorable mention to our boy Stephon Diggs, $7,700, expensive price tag, but he's probably worth it. And just looking at some early ownership projections, I think he's going to be one of the chalkiest guys on the entire slate. But that doesn't mean that you can't get weird as the slate goes on. Like as we're looking at this slate and just seeing the massive total total for Buffalo and this being the highest over-under, like it's still possible that you need pieces of this game to end up on like that optimal or close to optimal lineup. So regardless of the ownership, no issues whatsoever on being heavy on the Bills passing game. Moving on to game number 2, Rams at Seahawks. This is a guy that I've heard a couple people talk about, but someone that I've been, I guess, hot and cold on as the year's gone on. So Tyler Lockett, he's 6,900. My first instincts of this game is just kind of gross in general, but it sounds like you like Tyler Lockett a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this game does, I don't want to say it has shootout potential, but we could see a spot where we maybe like mini stacks with opposing wide receivers. Both of these defenses have faced top 10 passing rate in neutral game script over the second half of the season. This Tyler Lockett it's more of a indictment on DK Metcalf having to face Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey is going to be following DK. DK's totaled just 17 if we look at half PPR points, FanDuel points in 2 games against the Rams this year. 1 game under 5 fantasy points. So really tough to trust DK here. And if we just look at down the stretch, I mean, there was a big chunk in the middle of the season where it looked like DK was the clear wide receiver 1 on this team. He and Tyler Lockett have been neck and neck in terms of targets over the final month of the season. And Tyler Lockett's actually been seeing a higher average depth of target than Metcalf over that stretch. So just with that shadow coverage from Ramsey and just with not a lot of excitement in this game, where we still want pieces to kind of fill out our roster from all the games. And it might be, I don't know if it's going to be necessarily unique. It's hard to get unique on a 3-game slate. But I do think, like you said, people are probably going to have the bias against Tyler Lockett. So they're going to have to throw it somewhere. And Jalen Ramsey locking up DK Metcalf, he's just done a really good job of it this year.
Yeah, I think the running backs are going to be pretty popular in this game with Carson and just on the other side, I think, as well. But I think that what I was looking at here was if DK Metcalf was going to be super low owned, then maybe we have some interest in attacking Ramsey because of the price tag at 6,700. But it seems like that might be kind of, I guess, moving the ownership closer together than I originally thought. So if it's all things equal, or at least close to equal, yeah, I'd rather just play Tyler Lockett in the much better matchup. So I'm with you on that. Let's move on to game number 3, Bucks at Washington football team. So this is one, obviously we have some injury concerns for Evans, some concerns with Brady if he is going to be under a ton of pressure in this game. But sounds like Antonio Brown can kind of move his way through all of those negatives and I guess be one of those guys in this game that you have to have.
Yeah, there's a lot to figure out with Evans' health. That's not only going to move our expectation on Tampa Bay, but really move the ownership. We saw a couple of weeks ago, this team was on the Saturday slate. We had a 3-game slate in week 16, and Evans, Brown, and Godwin, they all really cannibalized each other's ownership. All of them were over 25%, but all under 40%. So kind of bunched up together there. Obviously, if Evans is out, we're going to see Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin, their ownership really spike. I would expect it to be around 50%. But if he's there, it's going to kind of cause this situation of what do we do? Well, we saw when Evans went out last week, Antonio Brown dominated target share. And even if Evans does play, it could be a situation where he is kind of in a decoy position. And in that situation, we want to see who are the players we want to be overweight on. Obviously, Tampa Bay has this big total. But again, it's looked like a diluted target share. Outside of Washington's pass rush, their strength has really been in the middle of the field. They rank 6th in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to tight ends, and they allowed the 3rd fewest yards per attempt to wide receivers lined up in the slot. So you really want to attack Washington with your outside wide receivers. So either rolling out a double stack with Tom Brady and Mike Evans, or just being way overweight on Antonio Brown is the way that I like to figure out how I'm attacking this Tampa Bay receiver core, where everybody's kind of just going to be throwing darts, I think, kind of throwing it against the wall and seeing what works. I really like having conviction on those 2 guys.
I like that. I also think that there's going to be some people that just see that price tag from Rob Gronkowski at 3,900 and want to go there. But like you said, we really want to target this team on the outside. So I think Antonio Brown makes a ton of sense, even if Evans is in that game. So totally with you on that. Let's move on to the Sunday games. This first game, I was hoping these teams wouldn't face each other in the first round because they're very fun to watch. I think both these teams could have potentially made a run in the AFC. But Ravens at Titans, you're going all the way to the top with Lamar Jackson. Hard to fault you with how he's been playing lately, though.
Yeah, kind of similar to what I talked about with Josh Allen. Just if we're looking at this 3-game slate, the Sunday only slate, where are we going to start? What do you want to be building your core around? And a lot of people are going to look at this game, but I really like the Lamar side of things. Lamar's been playing at an MVP level, what he looked like in 2019 over the final 5 weeks of the season. Obviously, really getting it done with his legs, a ton of rushing upside. But the efficiency is really what puts him over the top, near 9% touchdown rate over those final 5 games. And Tennessee is a defense that struggles against every single position. They rank in the bottom 10 in schedule adjusted fantasy points to every position except for tight end. Baltimore has a very concentrated passing attack, so it's not one that I'm going to be necessarily double stacking. But I do think that with the way that the Ravens have played and how bad Tennessee's defense has struggled, that this is one game that could, if we're looking for kind of a surprise team to run away with it, I like Baltimore to do that. And if they do have such a game, then it's Lamar really putting up big numbers.
There's some narratives here, of course. Like we saw this exact matchup in the playoffs last year. I would imagine Baltimore just coming in with so many expectations last year. It's kind of not really there this year, right? Like they kind of limp in some ways, but they were really hot down the stretch. So this is probably a team that no one really wanted to face in the first round. Big part of that has to do with Lamar. So 7,800, definitely think he's worth it. Similar to Josh Allen, like you said, like just because this first game is going to carry some ownership with it doesn't mean, like looking at these other 2 games, that you won't need pieces. And Lamar is a piece to definitely plant your flag for sure. So game number 5 on wildcard weekend, number 2 on the Sunday slate, we have Bears at Saints. Michael Thomas might be back for this one, 6,300. He's just really underpriced, right?
Yeah, he's really underpriced. When he's active, he's typically over a 30% target share guy. This is an offense that when we see Kamara, Breeze, and Thomas all active together, the offense is just extremely concentrated. We've only had one game this year where Michael Thomas and Drew Brees have both played over 50% of the snaps. That was all the way back in week 1. So I think people are going to look at a lot of splits and kind of forget that. We had Michael Thomas paired up with Taysom Hill a lot towards the end of the season. The big concern with the Saints here, Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray not getting any practice all week. They should be activated by Sunday for COVID, but Michael Thomas, the only one getting limited practice. I mean, he's technically has the questionable tag too, but all signs pointing to him playing. This is a game just in general where if I'm attacking it, I'm attacking the Saints side. We don't need to touch on every single team, even on a 3-game slate. And Chicago's relied really heavily on playing bad defenses, turning short passes into long plays. So I really like just onslaughts on the Saints side. And I don't think you necessarily have to bring back Chicago, but that really all revolves around having Michael Thomas back, and his salary is just way too low to ignore.
Yeah, I think one of the kind of macro decisions that people are be making, if you're building in these little mini stacks, it doesn't have to be a guy from both sides. It's only 3 games. Right. You need to like pick the correct pieces, but also like if you believe in an offense, like we were just building a lineup with Ryan Hodge earlier today, and we got in this weird spot. Like, would we want to play Kamara and a bring back with Montgomery? I was like, I feel like we should just play Kamara and Michael Thomas. Just really, if we're bullish on this New Orleans side of the ball, there's no reason to force in a mini stack for a guy like Montgomery, who we're not. I mean, if there's one spot, like this is probably one of the worst possible spots or draws, I'll say, for Chicago, right? It's because they've been running the ball really effectively. New Orleans is very good against the run. And Mitchell Trubisky is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league while under pressure. New Orleans brings a ton of pressure. So I'm with you, man. I think that there's a chance that New Orleans can roll here. Michael Thomas is certainly going to be involved. Very, very underpriced. The last game on the wild card slate, Browns at Steelers. Diontae Johnson, kind of in that same range, 6,200. I think that we're probably going to be building some lineups that are relatively balanced. But again, another guy that can just have a huge target share when things go well. But tell us why you like him in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes all down to volume and price, especially on DraftKings. He's seen since week 9, double-digit targets in every game except for 2 on the season, averaging nearly 10 targets per game. We have Juju Smith-Schuster missing practice. That only boosts the prospects of Diontae Johnson here. I just like the Pittsburgh passing game as a whole. I think that Ben Roethlisberger probably comes in as the fourth highest owned quarterback on a 3-game slate, despite the fact that they are a team that throws at the highest rate neutral game script. And then on the other side of the ball, or we have Cleveland missing players because of COVID. They're not able to practice. They're coming into this game cold. They're down their starting safety, and who knows what else by the time that game starts. So they're really going to be attacking Cleveland through the air in this one. Cleveland isn't a team that's going to get a ton of pressure besides having a couple good guys up front. As a team, they're not exceptional at it, and Pittsburgh is just a team that loves to throw. So with Juju potentially out or limited, I'm really liking Deontay's volume in a spot where Pittsburgh's projected to score almost 27 points.
TJ Hernandez, everyone. That's going to do it for our locks of the week. Be sure and follow him on Twitter. He's at TJ Hernandez. Of course, obviously, all the stuff that he's churning out over at 4for4.com. Check that out. Before you get out of here, smash that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel. All that good stuff if you haven't already. I will be live on my channel on 9 a.m. Eastern time, both on Saturday and Sunday this week. A little bit of a double header. The Line Movement Show will be directly after at 9 a.m. Eastern time, both on Saturday and Sunday. So should be a great time. Let us know in the comment who your favorite overall play on DraftKings is this week, and we'll talk to you guys soon.